Morgan Fox's killer attended her vigil. He bought her favorite coffee and wrote her name on the cup. He sat in a car with her young daughter and told her she looked just like her mother. Then he posted a long tribute on Facebook, calling her a bright light and demanding justice. Her family was horrified because investigators already knew what was on his phone, and it told a very different story. This is the case of Morgan Fox, a young mother, a supervisor at FedEx, and a woman who did everything right to protect herself. It didn't matter. Plain Township, Ohio, October 2020. Morgan Fox was 29 years old. She worked as an operations manager at a FedEx ground distribution center in North Canton. Her shift started early, very early. Most mornings she left her house around 2:15. She'd be at her desk by 3. She had a daughter, 8 years old. The two of them did everything together. Morgan's family described her as generous, kind, and deeply devoted to the people she loved. She lived with her boyfriend, Jason Skarnecchia, and their blended family. It was a stable home, a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where people left their porch lights on and waved to their neighbors. Morgan had earned her position at FedEx through hard work and reliability. She was respected. She was good at her job. But not everyone was happy about that. Jason McDermitt worked at the same FedEx facility. He was 29, same age as Morgan. They'd known each other for a while as coworkers. At some point, he started bringing her food and drinks at work. He talked about her constantly. Other employees noticed. New hires he trained would hear her name within the first conversation. He showed people photos of her. He described their friendship as close, very close. Morgan seemed to see it differently. She treated him like a coworker, maybe a casual friend, but nothing more. She was in a committed relationship. She had a child. Her life was full. Still, McDermitt stayed close. He attended her daughter's birthday party that summer. Morgan's mother later testified that his behavior made her uncomfortable. He inserted himself into family moments, called her grandmother grandma, acted overly familiar. No one said anything at the time. In the summer of 2020, McDermitt's behavior started shifting. Multiple co-workers noticed he seemed fixated. One testified he appeared consumed by the idea of staying in Morgan's life. He wasn't just talking about her anymore. He was watching her. Investigators would later discover that he had been secretly recording her for months, at work, in her home, using his phone to capture video of her without her knowledge. He also used a specialized app to screenshot her Snapchat posts without triggering her notification system. Hundreds of images, saved, cataloged. Morgan had no idea. Then came October 8, 2020. Morgan left her phone unattended at work. McDermitt and 2 other male co-workers picked it up. They went through it. Her messages, her photos, everything, including intimate images she had stored privately. When Morgan found out, she was devastated. She immediately told her boyfriend and her mother. She asked for help contacting HR. She wanted to file a formal complaint. She started looking for another job. She blocked McDermitt on all social media. She cut off all communication with him. The men involved were disciplined by FedEx management, but Morgan still had to see them at work, still had to walk the same halls. She told friends she felt targeted, uncomfortable. She just wanted to do her job without feeling watched. Co-workers noticed McDermitt's mood changed dramatically after that. He seemed depressed, unkempt. He kept trying to reach out to Morgan through mutual friends. He asked why she wouldn't talk to him, what he'd done wrong. One co-worker later testified that he seemed obsessed with the idea that Morgan had been taken from him, but she was never his to begin with. October 27, 2020. Morgan followed her normal routine. She dropped her daughter off at her mother's house. She prepared for her early shift the next morning. Around 1:30 a.m., her mother woke and called to make sure Morgan was awake, a routine they followed every work night. Morgan answered right away. She was already up. She told her mother she loved her. It was the last conversation they would ever have. October 28, 2020. Shortly after 2 a.m., Morgan left her house on Fraser Avenue. She walked to her car in the driveway. It was dark, quiet, the kind of stillness you only get in the middle of the night. She opened the driver's side door. She started to get in. Someone was waiting. 2 shots, both to the head. Close range. Morgan collapsed halfway into the car. Her feet were still on the ground. Her phone fell beside her. No neighbors reported hearing gunshots. No 911 calls came in. The street stayed silent. 6 a.m. Morgan's boyfriend woke up. He noticed her car was still in the driveway. That was wrong. She should have been at work hours ago. He walked outside. He found her slumped in the driver's seat. He called 911 immediately. Deputies arrived within minutes. They secured the scene. They photographed everything. Morgan's body, the car, the position of her phone, a bullet lodged in the passenger side door, and something else. Tire tracks in the grass. Mud splatter on the white vinyl fence. The pattern suggested a vehicle had been parked just off the driveway, hidden from the street, but with a clear view of the front door. Whoever did this had been waiting for her. The medical examiner confirmed what detectives already suspected. 2 gunshot wounds, both fatal. A .22 caliber weapon. No shell casings were found at the scene. That detail mattered. It suggested the shooter either used a revolver or methodically collected the casings afterward. The scene bore all the characteristics investigators associate with a planned execution. Investigators immediately began working through the most likely scenarios. A random attack seemed unlikely. This was a quiet residential area, low crime, and the shooting had happened at a very specific time. Someone knew Morgan's schedule. They interviewed her boyfriend first, standard procedure. He was cooperative, devastated. His hands were tested for gunshot residue, negative. His phone records showed he had been home, asleep. There was no motive, no conflict. Their relationship was stable. He wasn't a suspect. Detectives turned their attention to Morgan's phone. What they found painted a troubling picture. Messages to her boyfriend about the October 8th incident, complaints about feeling unsafe at work, frustration with how the situation was being handled. And then the communication stopped, with one person in particular, Jason McDermitt. Detectives brought McDermitt in for questioning. He was calm, cooperative. He said he'd heard about Morgan's death at work that morning. He admitted they'd been friends. He said he was devastated by the news. He agreed to let investigators search his phone. At first glance, his location data seemed to clear him. His phone had stayed at his apartment the entire night. It never moved. But investigators weren't satisfied, because phones and cars don't always travel together. Detectives pulled traffic camera footage from intersections near McDermitt's apartment and near Morgan's home. They worked backward through the timestamps, and they found it. A blue Ford Focus, bent front license plate, traveling from McDermitt's area toward Morgan's neighborhood around 1:37 a.m. The same car appeared again, leaving the area around 2:17 a.m. McDermitt drove a blue Ford Focus with a bent front license plate. Detectives obtained a warrant to seize the vehicle. When they inspected it, they noticed something immediately. It was clean, very clean. They pulled surveillance footage from a nearby Sheetz gas station. The timestamp was just hours after Morgan's murder. The video showed McDermitt's car going through the automatic car wash. He ran the undercarriage wash twice. It was raining that day. Crash reconstruction experts analyzed the tire tracks at the scene. They measured the width, the wheelbase, the tread pattern. They matched McDermitt's Ford Focus. Not similar, matched. A K-9 unit trained in explosives detection was brought in. The dog alerted to gunshot residue in McDermitt's car, on the driver's seat, on the floor mat. The dog didn't alert in Morgan's house or in her boyfriend's car, only McDermitt's. The suspect claimed he had been home all night, but investigators found his car on camera traveling directly toward Morgan's neighborhood at 1:37 a.m. That mattered because it placed him in the area during the exact window when Morgan was killed. What investigators were still missing was clear motive. They knew he'd been obsessed, but obsession alone doesn't build a prosecution. They needed to understand how deep it went. Detectives executed a second warrant, this time for McDermitt's phone, a full extraction. What they found was disturbing. Thousands of photos and videos, all of Morgan. Most taken without her knowledge. Videos of her at work, Screenshots of her Snapchat stories captured using a third-party app, footage recorded inside her home while she was in her kitchen, and something else. A long, ongoing text conversation on Skype. McDermitt had been writing under a fake female persona. He role-played explicit sexual scenarios involving a character he'd modeled after Morgan. He used her real name, her appearance. He even inserted photos of her into the stories. The content was detailed, obsessive. It went on for months. Co-workers were interviewed again. This time, they shared more. One said McDermitt had told him that he'd had a sexual encounter with Morgan. He described it in explicit detail. But there was no evidence that encounter ever happened. Morgan's messages, her friends, her family, none of it supported his version. Court records would later characterize it as a fantasy, one he'd convinced himself was real. Another coworker said McDermitt had been visibly distraught after Morgan blocked him. He wouldn't stop talking about her. He kept asking how he could fix things. But on the morning of October 28th, the same morning Morgan was found dead, his mood had changed. He seemed happier, almost upbeat. He came to work and asked, "Where's Morgan? She should be here." The suspect claimed he was devastated by her death, but he washed his car twice, just hours after she was killed. That contradiction gnawed at investigators. Why clean your vehicle so thoroughly on a rainy day? Why focus on the undercarriage? It looked like someone trying to remove evidence. Mud, grass, anything that might tie him to the scene. Detectives knew they were building a circumstantial case. There was no DNA, no fingerprints on the weapon, no confession. But the totality of evidence was overwhelming. They obtained a warrant to search McDermitt's father's home. His father owned several firearms, including a .22 caliber Heritage Rough Rider revolver. Ballistics experts tested the weapon. They compared it to the bullet recovered from Morgan's car. They couldn't definitively say it was the murder weapon, but they couldn't exclude it either. The rifling characteristics matched. Still, there was a gap. Investigators needed to understand the timeline. They needed the jury to see the progression. That's when they revisited the key dates. October 8th, the phone incident. October 18th through 24th, Morgan's final messages to McDermitt. She confronted him about still knowing her location. She told him to leave her alone. October 28th, she was killed. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for rejection to turn into murder. Detectives interviewed McDermitt's friends. One said he had seemed anxious after police seized his car. He mentioned the black box in the vehicle. He worried about traffic cameras. He even suggested to one friend that someone could have hacked his car, used it without him knowing. To investigators, that sounded like someone trying to build a defense before charges were even filed. The suspect claimed he had no involvement, but investigators found thousands of secret recordings on his phone and his car captured on camera at the scene. Each piece of evidence alone might have been circumstantial, but together they formed a pattern too consistent to ignore. November 1st, 2020. 4 days after Morgan's death, McDermitt posted a tribute on Facebook. It was long, emotional, public. He called her a bright light. He said the world had lost someone special. He used the hashtag Justice for Morgan Ashley. Morgan's family saw the post. They were horrified. Because by then they'd been briefed by investigators. They knew what was on his phone. November 4th, 2020. Jason McDermitt was arrested and charged with aggravated murder and menacing by stalking. The trial began in April 2021. Prosecutors laid out the case piece by piece, the surveillance footage, the tire tracks, the car wash, the phone evidence, the obsession. They argued that McDermitt had become consumed by Morgan, that when she rejected him and cut off all contact, he couldn't accept it. If he couldn't have her, no one could. The defense argued there was no physical evidence directly linking him to the shooting. No DNA, no fingerprints, no murder weapon conclusively tied to him. They pointed out that his phone had stayed at his apartment, that he had no prior criminal record, that his parents testified he had limited ability to fire a gun due to past wrist surgeries. But the jury didn't buy it. April 8th, 2021. Guilty, aggravated murder. Menacing by stalking. The courtroom was silent. At sentencing, Morgan's 8-year-old daughter addressed McDermitt directly. She said, "I thought monsters weren't real, but you proved me wrong." She told him he had hurt so many people, that he had ruined his own life because of how much of a bad person he was. The judge sentenced Jason McDermitt to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Morgan's family later reached a civil settlement with FedEx Ground. The funds were placed in a trust for her daughter. They also organized peaceful protests outside the FedEx facility. They called for stronger workplace protections, better responses to harassment complaints. They wanted Morgan's death to mean something. Jason McDermitt remains in prison. His conviction was upheld on appeal in July 2022. Morgan's daughter is being raised by family, surrounded by people who loved her mother, with support from the settlement trust established in her name. Morgan Fox did everything right. She reported the harassment, she blocked her stalker, she asked for help. It still wasn't enough. Her story is a reminder that obsession doesn't follow logic, and sometimes the people who smile at vigils are the ones who cause the grief. What do you think about this case? Could more have been done to protect Morgan? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to see more cases like this, hit the like button and subscribe. There's a lot more to uncover.